At the luxurious Ivory Sun Resort and Spa in Cape Town, where time feels suspended and love blooms effortlessly, tragedy silently unfolds. On July 10th, 2011, the bodies of Daniel and Claire Whitmore, young, newly married, and seemingly perfect, are discovered in their honeymoon suite. The scene is unsettling not for its violence, but for its eerie stillness and chilling precision. As police begin their investigation, the world sees only a headline about a tragic accident. But behind the scenes, a different story pulses, a calculated, emotionless act rooted in the past. A woman named Amelia Carson, once part of Daniel's life, had traveled across the world under a false identity with one goal: to end something unfinished. Daniel and Claire's love story, carefully curated for social media and society's gaze, hid fractures invisible to most. But in the shadows, Amelia had been watching, waiting, and finally, acting. There was no confrontation, no chaos, just a quiet, irreversible ending executed with intent. As the resort continues on, guests sunbathing, mimosas flowing, the sea indifferent, the suite remains haunted by a love story gone wrong. Linen is replaced, but the memory stains remain. Thandai, a seasoned housekeeper at the Ivory Sun Resort, begins her day expecting routine. But when she knocks on the door of Suite 417 and receives no answer, she feels something is off. The silence isn't peaceful, it's sealed, sterile, and wrong. Upon entering, she finds the air heavy with chemicals and wine, and then Claire Whitmore's lifeless body, elegant, but unnervingly still. Her death doesn't feel violent. It feels absent. Moments later, authorities arrive. Detective Lucas Vanderberg surveys the pristine yet ominous room. Nothing is out of place, no struggle, no damage. Claire lies elegantly on the bed. Daniel is found in the bathroom, contorted and wide-eyed, his face frozen in the moment of death. A shattered wine bottle, a strange white residue, and half-finished meals point to a carefully orchestrated poisoning. Toxicology confirms cyanide, delivered through wine and seafood, dual methods designed to ensure death. There are no fingerprints from an intruder, no sign of forced entry. Everything about the crime feels calculated, ritualistic. Someone hadn't just killed, they had composed the murder like a piece of art. Outside, the world carries on. The beach glows golden. Children laugh. Love continues. Inside Suite 417, only silence remains. As the news of the double death spreads through the Ivory Sun Resort, paradise begins to unravel. The staff go quiet, the atmosphere shifts, and the once luxurious Suite 417 becomes a sealed shrine of tragedy. Detective Lucas Vanderberg returns to the scene, moving with measured precision. He doesn't speak much. He listens to silence, to shadows, to the way death lingers where beauty once lived. Inside the untouched suite, everything remains oddly elegant. No mess, no struggle, only carefully executed finality. Wine glasses half full, seafood untouched beneath silver covers, a whisper of white powder near the shattered wine bottle. The lab soon confirms what the scene had already suggested: cyanide, delivered with cold precision in both food and drink. This was no accident, it was a blueprint of death. As the investigation deepens, surveillance footage reveals a mysterious woman arriving at the resort at 10:15 p.m. the night before. Wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a calm, confident stride, she glides through the lobby unnoticed, unregistered, untraceable. She leaves no digital footprint, no room, no reservation, no interaction. Only a glimpse. She had entered the hotel like she belonged. Then a lead. Daniel Whitmore's deleted data points to one name: Amelia Carson. A former lover, she had existed on the edge of his life for years. Hidden trips, secret payments, silent rendezvous. But 3 months before his wedding, the trail stopped. Abruptly. Daniel had cut her off, erased her. Too cleanly. A forged passport, under the alias Veronica Danis, confirms the rest. A one-way flight from New York to Cape Town. No luggage. No return ticket. Just a woman arriving in silence, carrying grief, memory, And something final. Surveillance footage confirms it. Amelia Carson was at the Cape Town airport. Her posture, her quiet stride, the way she moved through security like vapor, it all echoed the movements of a woman with a purpose, not panic. Detective Vanderberg studies her image. This wasn't rage or impulse. It was choreography, a ritual, a final chapter written with deliberate, devastating intent. Amelia hadn't come to warn Daniel. She came to conclude a story he had tried to bury. And she had done so with elegance, poisoning not only a meal, but the illusion he had spent years crafting. But before she became a ghost in a wide-brimmed hat, Amelia had been a woman in love. A New York-based artist and designer known for turning space into memory, she had fallen for Daniel Whitmore in 2008 at a Manhattan gala. He was magnetic, practiced, and already unavailable in ways she didn't yet understand. Their romance grew in the shadows, intimate, quiet, and invisible. She convinced herself it was real, even as the secrecy grew heavier than the intimacy. By 2010, the signs were clear. Daniel was pulling away. Their connection frayed, unspoken and unexplained. And in March 2011, Amelia discovered the truth, not in confession, but in headlines. Daniel was engaged to Claire Preston. A polished public announcement replaced years of whispered affection. Amelia hadn't just been left, she had been erased. She didn't rage. She went silent. Until, days before his wedding, Daniel called. One final time. A soft voice, full of hesitation. He said he wasn't sure, that everything was happening too fast, that he needed to see her just once more. When Daniel called, Amelia answered. Of course she did. They met at a Manhattan hotel the night before his wedding. It felt like old times, wine, soft conversation, intimacy cloaked in half-truths. He told her he missed her. They made love. She believed him, believed there might still be a choice to make. By morning, he was gone. No message. No goodbye. Just silence, and a wedding ceremony scheduled hours later. He married Claire Preston as planned. Amelia didn't break. She didn't scream. She sat with a new kind of stillness, quiet, sacred, and absolute. And then she began to prepare. With surgical precision, she mapped their honeymoon, the Ivory Sun Resort in South Africa. She followed social media posts, memorized the layout, studied the wine list. She forged a passport, booked a one-way flight, dyed her hair. She didn't write a note or leave a trace. What she carried with her wasn't hate, it was purpose. She wasn't returning to plead her case. She was returning to end a story. For 3 years, Amelia had lived as a ghost in Daniel's life, the secret lover, the unnamed woman, the unwritten chapter. Yet in those years, she believed she mattered, that what they had was real. He never said, "I love you" in daylight, but he showed it in quiet gestures, the right wine, the late-night calls, the way he touched her when the world was asleep. She mistook intimacy for intention. She thought privacy meant protection, not denial. Their relationship lived in upscale hotel rooms and whispered memories. It wasn't public, but it felt vivid. It wasn't defined, but it felt deep. And slowly, she built a future out of fragments. Until that future evaporated, not with betrayal, but with erasure. By the time she realized it, he was already replacing her with someone perfect. But Amelia wouldn't be a footnote. She wouldn't fade. June 2011. The headline struck like a blade. Daniel Whitmore engaged to Claire Preston. The photos were pristine, their smiles choreographed. Claire was everything Daniel could show off. Polished, pedigreed, perfect. Amelia Carson wasn't in the picture. She never had been. She had been erased without warning or ceremony. 12 hours before the wedding, Daniel called her. He sounded unsure, gentle, like the man she once trusted. He said he needed to see her, just one more time. Closure, he called it. But what happened wasn't closure. It was a final illusion. They met in a Manhattan hotel, their bodies remembering what their lives had tried to forget. By morning, he was gone. Blocked. Deleted. Forgotten. That afternoon, he married Claire. Amelia watched it unfold, still in her robe, still holding on to a moment she thought meant something. She didn't rage. She didn't cry. She became still. But her silence was not surrender. It was planning. She had already bought the cyanide. This wasn't impulse. This was orchestration. She forged a passport, took the name Veronica Danis, traveled to Cape Town ahead of the honeymoon. She checked into a cheap motel, slipped into the shadows, and studied. She learned the resort's rhythms, staff patterns, and Suite 417's privacy. The plan was as elegant as it was devastating. When the private meal was ordered, lobster and wine for two, Amelia was ready. She entered the suite quietly. No mask, no violence, just precision. A vial, gloves, a few careful drops. By the time Daniel raised his glass that night, his fate had already been sealed. Hours later, his body hit the marble floor. No loud struggle, no dramatic scene. Just the collapse of a man who thought he had escaped the consequences of forgetting someone like her. Outside, the sky was painted in Cape Town's signature dusk, lavender and gold. Inside, the myth of a perfect life unraveled quietly. Amelia didn't come to plead or haunt. She came to write the ending, one Daniel never gave her the dignity of. The night was designed to be flawless. Daniel had arranged it meticulously, a private dinner in their honeymoon suite, overlooking the Cape Town coastline. No interruptions, just soft jazz, candlelight, and aged wine to mark the start of their forever. At 8 p.m., the meal arrived. The food was elegant, the wine expertly uncorked. The staff left, and for a moment, everything was perfectly still. And in that silence, the story shifted. Neither Daniel nor Claire noticed the fatal twist that had entered with the wine. Cyanide doesn't shout, it whispers. It waits. Claire was the first to falter. Chest tightness, blurred vision, tingling hands. She collapsed gently, her body folding into the linen, her voice lost before it could cry out. Daniel stumbled next. Confusion.
Pain.
He reached the mirror and didn't recognize the gray-skinned man staring back. The wine bottle slipped.
Shattered.
Blood-red liquid spread across the bathroom floor before he dropped, convulsed once, then stilled. No cries for help. No final words. Just silence. At 11:45 p.m., a couple in a nearby suite reported strange noises, choking, dragging, then absolute quiet. By morning, the suite was a tomb. At 8:45 a.m., housekeeper Thandai unlocked the door to a scene that would haunt her forever. Claire's lifeless body slumped over the bed. Daniel collapsed in the bathroom, and a room caught mid-sentence, glasses half full, curtains dancing in the breeze, the scent of salt and something chemical in the air. It was meant to be their beginning. Instead, it became their end. Detective Lucas Vanderberg arrived at Suite 417 to a scene that was hauntingly pristine. No forced entry. No mess. No panic. Just two dead lovers and the echo of something deliberate. The cyanide was precise, measured to allow them a final evening of belief before it took hold. A single smudged fingerprint on a wine glass was all that remained. Amelia Carson had already vanished. She didn't run. She disappeared with surgical precision. Investigators would later call it a methodical erosion of identity. Amelia moved like smoke, checking into a rundown motel under a fake name, paying in cash, leaving no trace. Her stay was quiet, almost ghostly. Lights off. Curtains drawn. One bag. No interaction. On the third day, a housekeeper found her sitting silently in the room's corner chair, gazing at a blank screen, hands folded.
She didn't speak.
She didn't move. She looked like something unfinished, forgotten by time. By the time police tracked her location, the room had already been wiped clean, no prints, no hair, no belongings. Only the unsettling absence of her. Detective Vanderberg widened the search. He began to learn that chasing Amelia meant looking for the voids she left behind, not the evidence. Then, at last, came the flicker on airport surveillance. On July 12th, at Cape Town International Airport, Amelia Carson attempted to board a flight under a new identity. Her disguise was flawless, her forged documents near perfect. But a fleeting technical glitch during passport scanning caused a 90-second delay, just long enough for her to sense risk. With calm precision, she stepped out of line and melted into the crowd. 2 days later, a clerk in Johannesburg recalled a woman who purchased hair dye, scissors, and blank ID cards.
She didn't speak.
She didn't linger. She moved like someone who had already left her life behind. Detective Vanderberg followed a trail of emptiness. Quiet motel rooms, no fingerprints, no footage. Amelia wasn't running. She was erasing herself. Finally, on July 22nd, she was found in a Johannesburg Airbnb. A night clerk, obsessed with the case, recognized her mannerisms. Police entered quietly at dawn. They found her seated on the floor, composed and still. No struggle. No explanation. Just a single sentence. "He promised me forever." It wasn't confession. It was closure. Back at the station, her identity was confirmed. DNA matched the print from Suite 417. She offered no further words. No justification.
No apology.
The media erupted, labeling her the ghost of Cape Town, the honeymoon killer, and the vanishing mistress. But these headlines missed the truth. Amelia hadn't lost control.
She had taken it back.
This was the story of a woman erased, reclaiming authorship of her own ending. Her extradition to the U.S. was uneventful. No drama. No statements. Just a quiet return to the country that had forgotten her. The trial was held in Seattle, cold, gray, and distant. Fitting for a woman who had walked through betrayal, through grief, through vengeance, not loudly, but with the silence of a storm that had already passed. In court, Amelia Carson sat like someone who had rehearsed every outcome. Her face unreadable, her silence intact. She did not seek sympathy. She didn't even look at the families of her victims. The prosecution painted her not as a monster, but as an architect. Her actions weren't spontaneous. They were surgical. Evidence revealed her precise planning, a forged identity, cyanide purchased under a fake aquarium business, and a carefully orchestrated timeline designed to lull Daniel and Claire into a false sense of safety before the poison took hold. Her search history was damning. Phrases like, "how to dose cyanide in wine," and bookmarked articles on forgotten women in the media. The forensic testimony detailed how the poison had been timed perfectly. The couple had time to toast, laugh, believe they were safe, before their bodies betrayed them. The defense didn't argue innocence. They argued emotional erosion, a woman driven to desperation by betrayal and years of secrecy. But the prosecution dismantled that theory, reminding the jury that heartbreak doesn't purchase poison. In just 4 hours, the jury returned with a verdict.
Guilty.
Premeditated murder. Murder by poisoning. Aggravating circumstances. Life in prison. No parole. No escape. Amelia didn't flinch. The courtroom emptied. The press erupted. But inside, something remained. A silence thick with finality. Not just the end of a trial, but the final line in a story written long before the poison touched the glass. The trial of Amelia Carson ended without fanfare. No speeches, no applause, just cold finality. She was led away in silence, a woman swallowed by the system she had meticulously orchestrated. Gone from myth or legend, she disappeared into the anonymity of prison life. There were no words of apology or explanation. Her story, once gripping and mysterious, was now reduced to a permanent record, her life consumed by the steady, unyielding march of time behind bars. Outside the courtroom, the world moved on. The media moved to new stories, and the families of the victims retreated into their grief, holding on to memories they couldn't shake. Daniel's parents, still surrounded by his belongings, could not erase him. Claire's sister, Melissa, described the verdict as the closing of a door that could never be opened again, an irreversible separation from the lives lost. Amelia's actions were no longer just a murder story. They were a manifestation of grief turned into a cold, calculated design. She had planned, not out of rage but from a place of emotional erosion, building a blueprint for vengeance. The media gave her many labels: mistress, psychopath, woman scorned, but they missed the true depth of her tragedy. Her final act was not an outburst, but an execution of a plan long in the making. The hotel where the murders took place replaced the linens, changed the carpets, and quietly updated the suite's name. But the room itself still remembered. Guests continued to stay, but many complained of the unnerving stillness, a lingering quiet that seemed to hold its breath, perhaps a subtle echo of the past. Justice had arrived too late to feel like resolution. And the memory of what happened in Suite 417 lingered, not in noise or drama, but in the deep, unsettling quiet. The story of the Honeymoon murders reaches its conclusion not with dramatic flair, but with a quiet, haunting finality. Claire and Daniel Whitmore died under false pretenses, trapped in their own illusions of love and truth. Claire passed away believing love was eternal, unbreakable, while Daniel sought to escape his buried truths, only to meet his end in the very place he thought he could hide from them. Amelia Carson, however, faced a different kind of death, one that began long before the courtroom. Her slow disappearance over months and years reflected a person who, in the absence of love and identity, chose to construct her own ending. Amelia didn't run from justice. She became it. Her methodical, calm approach to vengeance and her ability to erase herself from the world left a chilling impression. How quietly, completely, and understandably it all unfolded. It's this quietness, this cold certainty, that frightens the most. The murders have since become part of the true crime lexicon, dissected endlessly by media, psychologists, and viewers alike. Yet, those who live through the aftermath, the families and the loved ones left behind, no longer ask why or how. Instead, they are left to live within the answer to that question.